Recording started.
Talk recorded live.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you're listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable Podcast. This is podcast number 514. My name is Eric Nilsson, and with me today, I have my co-host, Matt Lunguth. Matt, today's Wednesday, June 10th, 2020. How are you doing?
Eric, I am well. Another hot and steamy day in central Pennsylvania. How are things out in the Bay, and what's the color of the Bay?
It is 85 degrees today, so it's a nice summer warm one. Beautiful sunny weather. We got to keep the water on the grass, otherwise things dry out, because it's now we're in the west, and the west during the summertime dries out and gets brown. But the ocean is beautiful. It's sunny and nice, so we got a nice turquoise green going. We never get that turquoise blue up here in Northern California, but it is a beautiful, warm, sunny environment, and we're seeing nice weather. Probably we'll get nice weather for the rest of the year till our rainy season starts in November. On the show today, we're going to be talking to Miguel Brasseur. Miguel is a senior director at NTT Luxembourg. Miguel is also a vExpert Pro and runs his own blog. Miguel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Eric. Just a small thing. I'm not yet a director at NTT, but just a senior implementation engineer.
Oh,
because I'm sorry about that.
No,
there's a misunderstanding.
It means that they haven't given you that lobotomy yet. You still have your brain, right? Because director or any kind of senior director, you just have your brain core stem cell there, and that's it. You don't have anything else. So great.
Maybe that's the reason.
Yeah, still a lot of intelligence, and I love that you run a blog. Your blog is called Mystic Marvin, mysticmarvin.eu. Right. Fantastic blog, and we're here to talk a little bit about your blog.
Yes. So Mystic Marvin is the name of the two projects related to VRail back in 2014. Mystic was the name for Dell EMC, and Marvin was the name for VMware. My blog was intended to be a VXRay blog at the beginning. So yeah, I thought Mystic Marvin was the correct name to do that.
That makes sense. That gives us a little history. I thought it was just you loved, the dark magic, and that's, you just decided that virtualization is dark magic, and you would make a blog around the dark magic to run virtual environments. Little did I know.
Not really.
Right. Okay, before we get to you though, Miguel, I thought we would just loop by Corey and talk a little bit about what's happening in the news as the world starts to settle back from the pandemic. Things are getting back to normal, which we're happy about. And first things first, VMworld, I think Reg opens up on the 23rd of this month. So June 23rd, Reg will be open, and the bulk of VMworld will be free this year. So you can just go in and reg. It's going to be a 2-day event. Plus, we are looking at extensions of some type of the contents for an extra couple days. So be aware of that. I think we're working with VMware Code to do some interesting code challenges throughout that rest of the week. So it should be fun there. The reg is opening up. We want to know who you are, but you can come in, reg for free, and then get notification. There will be sessions. You'll be able to have a schedule builder. You'll be able to build your schedule. There'll also be consumable content like Netflix. So it looks like it's going to be a good show. There's a lot of work going on ahead of time. There will be some fun activities. So watch for June 23rd, get registered. Schedule builder will be opening up, but in this case, because it's all virtual, we don't think we'll have such a lockdown approach to sessions, because it should scale out. We don't have seats. It's all virtual. Along with that, I believe there's going to be a paid version. They're putting together what some private meetings will be like. And the paid is not going to be very much, probably under $300 US for a paid offering. And the paid offering will be more on you get to go meet certain executives. If you want to come in and be part of a 15-person meetup where you're expressing interest on particular topics with some senior executives at VMware, I think they're going to be doing a paid option to allow those type of meetings to happen. And at VMworld, they have an executive section at VMworld where they have meetings that are for executives. And I think they're looking at how do they provide that value without having it be overwhelmed. There will only be a set number of paid slots that will happen. And they're trying to gatekeep it a little bit to make that a quality experience for people that are coming and want to experience what you would get from VMworld from that perspective. Moving on, Corey Romero, I know you're on the call, being patient here. I know there's a lot of stuff going on with the experts. You've been doing briefings and other things are happening. Why don't you give us an update?
Yeah, hey, first, I'm going to mention the weather. You guys mentioned the weather in California. Utah, it literally snowed in my house yesterday, and today it's 80. So very, very odd, strange weather. But as far as vExpert goes, yeah, we've been doing a ton of sessions with partners, as well as VMware. We've got another session coming up with VMware. Don't have a date yet, but that's going to be happening. So June 17th, so just in next week, we're going to have another session from VMware on VMC on AWS. So, that kind of ties me into the next thing I'm going to say is, if you want to be a part of these sessions where we deep dive, we demo, we don't talk marketing things, this is information that's very, very useful for your job as an IT practitioner. We have applications that are open currently, and they're open until June 25th. The original date was the 20th, but there was a little bit of a pause in social, so we decided to extend those to the 25th. I had gone and asked the experts to write articles on what the vExpert program has done for you personally and professionally, and what it means for you. So over the next few days, 15 days, we'll be tweeting out those articles. So if you're interested in the vExpert program, or maybe you've got a misconception of what the program is, I would recommend to go through those articles. And also, those articles will be wrapped up in a vExpert blog article that I've got. I'm still writing it as these vExpert articles come in. To find that article, you can go to blogs.vmware.com/vExpert. And so, yeah, I'm excited about what's going to happen in 2020. We have a lot going on in the vExpert program.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. I think that we don't have much news. We did acquire a couple companies in security, Live something or other. I don't know the name of the company. Anybody got the name of the company we announced we acquired? Live Wire, I want to say.
I know they focused on Kubernetes security.
Yes.
Yeah.
Last Wire or Last Defense. Acquired another company. We're going to continue to acquire companies, rounding out our security portfolio for Kubernetes, which is good. And that's all we got in the news. So we're going to move on. So Miguel, why don't you tell us a little bit about your career? What do you do at AT&T, and how did you get where you are today?
Okay, so yeah, I live in Belgium and working at Entity Luxembourg. So formerly called Dimension Data, maybe you've heard about it. I started my career 14 years ago, almost 15. I did technical support for small companies and individuals for an Apple authorized partner, and this is where I fell in love with Power Mac G4, G5, and the old-fashioned Apple things. Then I had several experiences. One of the most relevant was delivery specialist at EMC. This is where I learned, data centers from scratch. I mean, from the beginning. And I had the opportunity to participate to a 9 weeks bootcamp at EMC's headquarters in Massachusetts. So then my move to Entity has been quite natural because of the major partner, Dell EMC and VMware partners. So I'm now working on HCI solutions, vSAN, VXRays. And at Entity, we help customers to build their next generation data centers with modern solutions to modernize their infrastructures with all the new fancy products. And
I
that's
know
it.
how we found you, or how we work with you, because you're a vExpert Pro.
Mhm.
Mystic Marvin, the blog, right, which is
Yeah.
a great blog. I gotta say that we're going to touch today on new logic for vMotion, which is one of your articles. But you have a lot of other great articles there. How often are you generally producing an article and putting it on your blog?
Usually, so we started in March, so it's pretty new. It's still pretty new, and usually we didn't fix. We don't have a fixed date. We put information as they are coming, but I would say at least one post per week. We did stop last week because there was a media social pause, and we decided to respect that. But I would say 1 or 2 per week. Yeah, because we are 2 people working on this blog.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, because I'm seeing a lot of content on your blog, right? Really nice, clean articles, and we'll see how long you last. Right? If you started in March, hopefully you can go a year or 2 and get a lot of content under your belt. It is a really nice blog, I got to say. A lot of fun to look through your articles. And who is your partner in crime with that?
So my colleague for that is Sandra Bertrand. She's a technical account manager at VMware Luxembourg. And so at the beginning, I did this initiative. I was alone for this initiative, and talking to her, she wanted to start something as well. So we decided to do this together. And it's always easier to have this kind of initiative working with someone, because alone it's more complicated to be recurrent, and to have you have the pressure to have 1 post per week. So to be 2, it's always better. And she has a lot of resources as well, so it's always easier.
Okay, so I got to say that I'll loop Matt in here in a second once we get into the topics, but I'll just throw out one more thing here, which is we use Dynamic Signal, which is a self-publishing tool. It's on advocacy.vmware.com, and we invite all of the experts to advocacy.vmware.com. And for prolific posters and pros, we actually make an advocacy, little business card that we put up with your post, and we promote it. And one of the things that we look at when we're looking at who to invite on the podcast is we go back and we look at the advocacy platform to see how many shares and likes your content gets. And your content was in the top 5 shares and likes for the vSphere Part 1 New Logic for vMotion article, which, and we got to say, we saw Sarah as well, and thought that we should reach out and include you on the community podcast, just to allow the community members to see who you guys are, and do a shout out to the advocacy platform run on Dynamic Signal. If you have content, you want to share it, you can get on that platform, share it to, I think, 5,000 evangelists and influencers, including about 2,000 to 3,000 VMware employees, who then can share it out to their social channels. So good job with that. You got a lot of traction on that article, a lot of shares. So.
Yeah, I didn't know the advocacy platform before, and we had a special vExpert meeting talking about that. I followed this meeting, and then after that I've applied what I did learn, and the blog took off. It was I really saw the difference by sharing my article. And I mean, in terms of traffic on the blog, so it's pretty awesome. I recommend all the bloggers to do that.
Last year, we actually had a lot of content, but it was a lot of corporate content. So this year in 2020, we made an intentional effort to build the business cards, get it out in front of the experts, because we kind of want that platform to be more community content, more content from from the community because it is an influencer platform, and that has worked out really well. Everybody in the vExpert community has stepped up, and we're seeing much better community content, and for me, much more relevant content, instead of it just being Pat Gelsinger or Ray O'Farrell, talk about our strategic vision, which always does really well on the platform because everybody likes to share Pat. But this content is much more relevant and useful to have out on our social channels. So yeah, excellent. With that, I will get into the article. The article that caught everyone's attention was it's out, vSphere 7, and now with new logic for vMotion. This blog article is on mysticmarvin.eu. You can just see it in his list of articles, and it looked pretty good. So why don't you take us through a little bit about the blog article? How did you decide to write it, and take us through kind of what areas there are to improve vMotion. We've watched vMotion out there for years. We love vMotion, and lo and behold, we're discovering that in vSphere 7 we did some improvements. So why don't you take us through that?
So with vSphere 7 being now live, we thought it was a good idea to focus on this great feature with which was the vMotion, in particular the improvements. So version 7 focused on the today's challenges, which are supporting large VM with larger CPU and memory footprints, but while increasing performance and reducing switchover time. So this is what the article is about.
So Miguel, when you say large VMs, let's sort of define that out. So when we talk about how this, or the size of VMs that this could be affecting and where we might see the improvement points, can you speak to that?
Yes, sure. So when I say large VM, I mean virtual machines with a lot of vCPUs and with a lot of memory. Because the way vMotion works, this has an impact on the performance and on the workloads which are running during the vMotion. And we can see now what is called monster VM, with a very large amount of vCPU and memory. It can go to up to 6 terabytes, I think. But support for 24 terabytes per VM has been announced.
And was there a production work case that you had happened to see this in, or something that at NTT that really highlighted that was maybe an experience, or where you had looked where stunning was an issue? Or
no, personally no, but I know that, for example, large transactional databases,
sure,
things like this, which are producing a large number of IOPS, are very sensitive to the vMotion process.
So let's walk through, if you don't mind, in 6.7, how the current process is with it, a vMotion, and what the logic is there, so our listeners can have a rough idea of what's the existing state, and then as we're transitioning now to 7, where their improvements come.
So to start with, at a high level, vMotion starts with a basic compatibility check. So this check is possible to migrate, and what could prevent this live migration. Then vCenter tells the source and destination of what is happening, of what is currently happening, and it creates what is called a migration specific. And this migration specific contains information about the virtual machine that is being live migrated, the configuration of the virtual machine, the source and destination ESXi host, and the vMotion networking details. This migration specific is shared with the source and destination, and after that, vCenter starts to communicate with using the daemons, VPXD and VPXA on the host. But all this happens pretty fast. And when the migration is started, the virtual machine is placed in what is called in a intermediate state, which simply means that the configuration cannot be changed. And at this time, the memory is still active at the source. And during the live migration, it is the case. So all this to say that there is a specific workflow which is happening. And it starts with the creation of a VM at the destination. So this VM is an empty shell. And it's masked at that time. Then it starts copying the memory. This is called the pre-copy phase. And when the pre-copy phase is done, it suspends the source. After that, it transfers the device states to the destination. We will come back to it later. And this is where it's important. And after that, it resumes the destination and finally power off the source. And there is a great post at VMware, at blogs.vmware.com called vMotion process under the hood. I highly recommend for this post for those who wants to know more, about a deep dive with all the process, with a lot of details, diagrams, and so on. It's very interesting. So this is the process, and it didn't change from 6.7 to 7. But what has changed? The first improvement I'd like to talk about is the memory paging. So during the pre-copy phase I talked about earlier, we need to trace all the memory pages of the virtual machine. And the reason behind this is because the guest OS is still inside the VM, is still writing data into memory during the vMotion. So we need to keep track of that. And this is done with what is called page tracers. And these page tracers have to be installed on each vCPU in use by the virtual machine. So the more you have vCPU, the
higher the number of tracers. Sure.
Exactly. So the problem is that the installation of these page tracers cause each vCPU to briefly stop. We talk about here for microseconds, and this is where transactional databases come into play. This kind of workloads can be very sensitive, and this can have the fact to stop the vCPUs can have a negative impact on these workloads. And now with vSphere 7, it's different. It introduces a new feature called loose page trace install, and it is pretty much the same method, but the difference is that a single vCPU is claimed for the entire page tracing work. So the VM and its apps can keep working while vMotion does its job without interruption on the other CPUs. And that's the first difference. That's the first improvement in terms of, I would say, resiliency with vSphere 7 and vMotion 7.
So instead of distributing all of the tracing work in the prior versions, now we're just dedicating one vCPU to do tracing and tracing alone.
You get it. Yeah, exactly. It sounds easy, but yeah, this is the way it is now, and it wasn't that before. So
well, now that we have all of those other vCPUs freed up, they can continue along with their standard workload, just as they would be humming along like normal without even a vMotion going along.
Yeah, exactly.
Take longer though, right? You're adding time to that, because instead of consuming many vCPUs to do that work, you're pinning it to one, which means your workload can continue on. Just means that copy will go slower.
I'm not sure, because this is not really the copy itself. There is another improvement which is more related to the time it would take. It's memory copy, so it's another improvement. I'm not sure the vCPU, the page loose tracing increase the time it takes. I don't have this information, but I'm not sure. So this leads me to the second major improvement, which is an improvement in the switchover phase. So when nearly all the memory has been transferred to the destination host, we've reached what is called the convergence. So it simply means that vMotion is ready to switch over to the destination. So in this is the very last phase, and the source VM is suspended. The checkpoint data and the memory bitmap are sent to the destination host. And the goal here is to keep it under 1 second or less. And the memory bitmap is something which is, sparse. For example, for 1 gigs of memory, it's 32 kilobytes of data in size to transfer. So it takes only milliseconds to transfer, no big deal. It's a little bit more challenging when you have, for example, 6 terabytes memory. Here we are talking about a bitmap of 192 megabytes in size. So if you add this 192 megabyte in size to transfer, added to the network latency, it's starting to be difficult to keep it under 1 second. And this is the goal in vMotion, to keep it under 1 second. So this is why it has been redesigned in vSphere 7. Transfer only a compacted version of the memory bitmap. So this is contained only the need information to lowering the stun time. So some tests have been made with 24 terabytes memory, and the stun time has been reduced from 2 seconds to 75 milliseconds with this improvement by lowering the memory bitmap. So again, there is a great article on blogs.vmware.com with more details about that.
Gotta say, it's nice, and I also like your blog article. Not to change subject, but I like your blog article that you do a shout out to Duncan Epping, and a 2010 article where he takes us through the vMotion story and some of the weaknesses that are there as well, right? So a really good shout out there to his.
Yeah, it is a good reading, and you can read testimonials from people who actually worked on the initial development of vMotion. And that's pretty awesome. It's also interesting to note that Kit Colbert was still an intern at this time, and he worked closely to the teams who developed vMotion. And another fun fact is that I don't know if you guys remember this software. It was Windows Pinball. Remember the game, the Windows Pinball?
Yeah. Pinball fans, for sure. Yep.
Yeah, and this is the application. This was the only interactive application they had on a virtual machine to test vMotion. So what they did is they started a game on the source machine. They vMotion this machine, and then they resumed the game on the other side, and voila, it was vMotion, and the states was transferred as well. So yeah, it's pretty visual,
It also reminds me of a Turing test. Did they try to do it live, where if I were playing pinball, I wouldn't notice that it actually shifted? I don't think the time was that quick back then, right? Yeah. Actually, nowadays it's pretty fast. There's also a piece that that in the early days, because you were on EMC storage, right, which is why EMC bought us, right, was that you were just copying the memory map of the processes in the OS. You weren't actually physically moving bits, because you had all your bits on shared storage. So you weren't moving the physical bits, you were just copying over the memory state and then starting it back up again, which is why EMC made so much sense for us. But they bought us because they saw, instead of running tons of OSs local on hardware, you could move it out to shared storage, and away you went. history of that is fascinating for anybody new to the ecosystem. Might not recognize that. So getting back to your blog article though, so you do have some diagrams here, the memory copy, the states that it goes through: suspend, transfer, checkpoint, transfer, change bitmap, transfer, swap bitmap, transfer remaining pages. So I think it's actually really nice that you actually kind of show the graphics. So if it's hard to follow along here, mysticmarvin.eu, that blog article really does kind of get at, the 2 seconds down to 175 milliseconds, and kind of gives you a nice diagram. How long did it take you to put this article together?
I think one day, one day working on that. To read all the article and to get the information from everywhere and put it into pieces without to have to just copy everything, but to summary things and to make it understandable. One day for this kind of article.
Yeah, and it is interesting, the size of VMs these days. Because I don't run my own VMs other than my own stuff, which my VMs are still like, if I get a 32 gig VM, that's a big thing for me, right? Like when I'm running. But there are actually, not 32, sorry, not 32, 32 meg, not 32 gigs.
Okay, yeah.
I'm down in the megabytes for my OSs, right? Not gigabytes, right? If I get a single gig, that's a huge VM for me. But actually, there's quite a bit of usage going on now on these monster VMs, I guess. And then at the same time, when we talked to William Lamb about what size of Kubernetes platform, how much memory do you need to run just an average Kubernetes? He was in the 32 gigabyte for the whole system. The memory sizes of everything are getting cumulatively bigger and bigger. I mean, I guess Moore's law is just continuing to march this up forward, where when you are doing memory copies, this just becomes important because everybody's just at larger and larger scale.
Yeah, that's right. And as we say in the article, there are some workloads like SAP HANA or Oracle backends, which are big VMs. They are some special use case, and actually, to be honest, we don't see it in a daily basis. But I know they are coming. This kind of VM,
Yeah.
Sure. Anytime. I mean, if the overall focus of the platform is to provide that abstraction layer, right, to our consumers, that especially in a DevOps model, when they don't have to worry as a consumer that there's stuns as we do maintenance or have to vMotion hosts around as part of daily operations. Anything that we can do to provide a level of transparency to our end users that consume those services, all the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very, very good. Very nice, clean blog article. And your blog article, I think, is only like 6 screens, maybe 6 screens. So it's a very consumable thing. So I would encourage people to go there. And I love your references to all the old content, right? Because that's also really nice, because if you're interested in it, you have the links to the vSphere blog that takes you through old stuff, the Duncan Epping's old piece, and the another one. There's a video explaining memory paging, which is good. So very clean way to look at things. As you move forward, are there other topics that you've seen in vSphere 7 that you're thinking about covering? Got to do one every week. I got to imagine that's kind of like running a podcast every week, where you need a guest every week to talk about things that are happening. Any things that have caught your attention?
I see that this is a multi-part series, Miguel, that where you've taken some other issues and some improvements with vSphere 7, where there's part 2 and part 3 with this as well. Do you intend to keep going?
Yeah, so the first part was the new logic for vMotion. The second one was a new way for the certificate management, and the third one was identity federation, and I think the fourth one will be around certificate as well or something else. But actually, this period of time, it's Sandra who is responsible for the blog. I mean, she is more active than me for the last month. Because yeah, that's also the reason for why we work at this. We are two working at this, because when one has more time, he works on it, and then we changed. And actually, I wrote a series of articles about vSAN. It was vSAN best practices. I did this in 3 parts as well. And yeah, Sandra is doing the same for vSphere 7.
I love the tactic where rather than a single author, where you're now combining it and making it an aggregate. And to your point, where one may have some other things going on or obligations or whatnot, the other can pick up, and you can still keep the cadence with posting articles regularly. Personally, I haven't seen that much. It's up for the major sites, but I love your initiative, and it really gets the content out there.
You know, this is a private initiative. I mean, we are doing this like all the others on our private time, but sometimes, you know, you don't have that much time to do those things, so you have more time to spend with customers and so on. So the way of doing this, to be a duo to do this, allows us to remain, you know, consistent in the blog life. So if I was alone, maybe I would stay 3 weeks or 1 month without article, and you can easily lose you know, followers if you don't post regularly. I think, in my opinion, that's the reason why.
I'd absolutely agree.
Yeah, it is true. When we coach people on social media, blogging, podcasting, any kind of content, we start with, what's your cadence? How often do you want your users to come back and engage with you, right? Because people are creatures of habit, right? They develop habits of when they're going to spend time learning, when they're going to listen to podcasts. This is why podcasts dipped down during the pandemic, because people aren't commuting. So I can see that having that cadence and then keeping your cadence. And sometimes at here, people ask me like, well, what are we going to do next week? What are we going to do for the next couple of weeks? I'm like, I don't know, but we're going to do something, because our cadence is every week, Wednesday, 12 to 1 live, and it shows up in your iTunes playlist, and you can download it and listen to us talk about community subjects as well as that. So I like the blog. Question for you: when looking at that Mystic Marvin blog, there is a user named Marvin, right?
That's me.
So you are the Mystic Marvin. I wasn't sure.
I am the Mystic
Sarah,
Marvin.
for you, because I'm looking at your Dell EMC announced VXRail 7, and I noticed it's from Marvin, and I'm like,
yeah,
that's not you, right?
So Miguel, what's coming? What do you plan to blog on next? What's piquing your interest? What's out there in the short term, and what do you see that may be coming to us for the fall? What can you tease for us as far as articles that you're going to have out there and content between the two of you?
You know, as I said at the beginning, the goal was to write a blog about VXRay, and I did more about VMware itself, or vSAN itself, or everything compared to VXRay. So I'd like to focus more on, you know, deeper dive into VXRay. You know, share some news, share maybe some more technical articles. You know, about support case I had to resolve and things like this. So more technical article on VXRay.
I am looking at your VXRail article as well, right? The Dell EMC announcement, and I got to say our Q1 numbers, we're not really supposed to talk too much about Q1 numbers. We only got like a week or so to talk about our financial numbers before we're not supposed to talk about it anymore. But we did announce them maybe a week and a half ago, so we can mention that, you know, VxRail growth was particularly impressive for Q1, right? So there, you know, maybe it's a combination of the the 7 release coming out that everybody is starting to look at it, but it is gaining traction in the market, right? So I don't know if you're what your opinion is on, you know, how VxRail is growing. What's the benefit? Give me the 1 minute elevator pitch of why you think VxRail is being accepted in the market more than it has in previous years.
Yeah, you know, locally, I'm talking locally for Luxembourg. Yeah, we can see that VxRail is growing very fast. It is one of the major, I mean, products in terms of hardware or in terms of HCI we are selling here, and this is because, yeah, it's pretty easy for customers in terms of lifecycle management, compared to even vSAN ready nodes, which are great depending on the brand, but this is another story. And it's easy for customers to rely on a one single support for the entire HCI solution. And I think this is the top reason to go for VxRay. There are other reasons. I mean, performance, ease of growth. You can scale out. You can, easily and without disruption. So all these are positive aspects of VxRay.
Do you see Dell actually also engaging more now, right? Like, is Dell maturing in its sales process? Does that affect you guys in Europe? Like for US, we see that Dell is a big factor of why also, because Dell is getting behind this, and it is a Dell EMC VMware package, but the Dell sales arm is a pretty big, entrenched arm that can engage with customers, and this just might be a better way to sell Dell gear at the same time.
I have the feeling that Dell EMC is pushing VxRay as well, and they have now the knowledge of the solution, and they know how to sell it at customer, how it can improve their processes, and they are aware of that.
I think customers are also coming around too and realizing how hard HCI can be without having, even if you have a ready node, how much easier day 2 operations can be when it's integrated into the platform.
Exactly.
Firmware management, driver management, that's a major time consuming thing to go through and check all those boxes that, hey, is everything met on the HCL, as opposed to having it all managed within one platform.
Yeah. And customer satisfaction is very high as well.
What always fascinates me is the life cycle of these implementations, right? Does VxRail actually extend that or help the life cycle management where, what's our refresh rate? Couple, 3 years, right? On hardware. Does it actually help us optimize that? For me, refreshing hardware lines is always a lot of work, right? You get, and if you can simplify how to throw things away, how to recycle things, how to get new things plugged in without a lot of work, right? Like, just wondering if that refresh cycle has something to play here.
Obviously, yeah. I mean, here the hardware refresh is as simple as a storage vMotion. I mean, you can add hardware, storage vMotion, and that's it. Okay, this is the big picture, but I mean, yeah, it's simplify everything.
Drop racks in vMotion, and away you go. And the refresh platforms because it's all compatible.
Yeah.
That's Yeah, can see that. Well, that'll be an interesting article. So we'll certainly pay attention to what you write next on the topics, because I think there's a lot of activity, and it is certainly a growing space. And so anybody that's listening to this and you're not paying attention to VxRail, start paying attention, because it is gaining traction. So Mystic Marvin is going to write some more content on it, which
cover that. Yeah, we will cover that.
We normally do a shout out. Are you on Twitter? Do you tweet very much? I assume as a vExpert Pro, you must do that a little bit.
I did with vExpert Pro. Yeah, I started with vExpert Pro, so I'm not a Twitter professional yet, but yeah, I have a Twitter.
And what is that, Miguel, so that our listeners know? What's your Twitter handle?
So that's Miguel Brasseur, BRASSEUR.
And Miguel being MIGUEL, correct? MIGUEL.
That's right. UEL. Yeah. Simply my first name and my name.
So hopefully we'll see a nice follower increase there for you after the listeners, and some definitely some more blog traffic that you had it to begin with, obviously, for some of the traffic there with the vMotion posts, but some great content, and it'll just continue along as you have those articles out there.
Yep.
Yeah, excellent, and get them up on Dynamic Signal. I have a suggestion for you, because this is a community podcast.
I think Eric might have just frozen over there. This is the international podcast. Eric joining us obviously from California, and Miguel from the Netherlands.
Belgium.
No,
from Belgium.
Belgium. I'm sorry, Belgium. Yeah. So we'll continue along here. I know that usually at this time, as we're starting to hit towards the top of the hour, we have the V Barbecue report. And Tony, you're still with us? Listening along there on the talk show? Perhaps not. We may have lost Tony's connection there when Eric dropped off with talk show. So Miguel, we want to thank you for being a participant in this episode. Again, that website, if you'd like to mention it, as far as where those blog posts are at.
So yeah, it is mysticmarvin.eu.
Okay, so at mysticmarvin.eu, again, the article that we had referenced today was part 1 of 3 with vSphere 7 improvements. Some great content out there. So please follow him along, and then follow him along on Twitter. And we appreciate you being on the show, and thank you for joining us. And with that, we will wrap up this episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm